Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Power Motoryacht podcast. I'm your host, Editor-in-Chief Dan Harding, joined by Senior Editor Chris Dixon. Chris, what's going on, man?
It is a beautiful day here in Charleston, South Carolina. I hope things are going well up in Connecticut. Hoping to get out on the water very soon, I would say.
I like it. It's Friday, but a little bit of business first. Kind of an interesting podcast today where we're going to dive into the stories behind our stories. You know, we just shipped our August-September issue off to the printer, and you know, kind of like your children, you're not supposed to have favorites, but I gotta say, I think this one came out really cool. We go into everything from the history of Fort Lauderdale to behind the scenes of Formula Boats to a really powerful column that Michael Rybovich goes into about the passing of a friend. I mean, really, we say a good issue has a lot of soul to it, and I think this one does. So we're gonna dive into that. But first, just a quick word from our sponsor. If you're interested in the latest bow and stern thruster technology, look no further than Sleipner's latest innovation, E-Series thrusters, now available from Imtra. Sleipner, formerly Side Power, developed E-Series with the first electric motor designed and manufactured specifically for marine thruster use. Now, combining that motor with their proven gear-like design and Q-prop skew propeller, they deliver performance and runtimes never seen before in DC thrusters. You can learn more at imtra.com. I gotta say, Chris, a nice bow thruster sounds pretty good for the Bertram. I think a lot of people will find that product appealing.
Yeah, I have to agree.
Yeah, no, it's funny because I think when thrusters were really first coming on the scene, everyone you'd kind of turn your nose up if someone was using a thruster. But I think thankfully we've gotten past that, and now everyone's realizing what a powerful tool the right size thruster is. Just to keep yourself up against the dock while someone's handling lines. It's like anything. It doesn't mean you can't drive a boat if you use a thruster. It's just a great tool to have at your disposal.
Yeah, no, I had a great time in Italy 2 weeks ago. Testing the thruster on an azimuth, to your point, and it's really something.
All right, so you know, without further ado, it's hard, you know, kind of like having a favorite issue. Hard to have a favorite story or department, and can't say that Waterfront was. It's weird to say it was a favorite, but it certainly was a powerful one. This issue. We told the story of Parker Bird, a young baseball player who tragically lost his leg in a tubing accident. You know, he was out there just enjoying kind of an all-American summer with his friends, went out tubing, and he was pulling himself into the boat, which was backing up to get closer to him, and he got tangled up into the propeller. And you know, Chris, that piece really made me think of you. You know, you got a son who's not that far off in age, and he's experiencing boating and the freedom that comes with it. I got to imagine that piece really struck a chord with you.
It did, and you know, it's actually a piece I'm planning on reading out loud to him, because I mean, his buddies they're out on the water here all the time. I mean, we're fortunate, incredibly fortunate, to live, you know, behind Folly Beach here in South Carolina, and they tube a lot. They wake surf, they fish, everything. But the tubing, especially, you know, not only can it be, I mean, we've all done really stupid stuff, I think, behind tubes, you know.
Sure, that's kind of the point in some ways, right? Trying to store your buddies.
And but here, there's even the added threat, as I think you probably have up there, of oyster shells. And I really, me and my fellow dads here in the neighborhood, my son has a little posse, and we really try to impress on the kids. Look, you guys have got to be hyper careful when you're tubing. We know how much fun it is, but you know, I mean, it's just very lot of hazards when you do it for as much fun as it is. So yeah, that one really spoke to me, and Parker's resilience, frankly, spoke to me as well. It's really an amazing and inspiring story.
Yeah, it was. His comeback was amazing, and there's lessons all over the place. I mean, he also got so lucky. You know, it was the first boat that came by, and didn't end up helping him. You know, and that was, you know, kind of a travesty. But you know, the second boat thankfully came by. There was a nurse on board that saved his life, and a lesson in making sure you got the right equipment on board, tourniquets, that you know how to use them, because man, things happen when they go wrong fast. And just so many powerful lessons, especially, and the timing couldn't be better coming into summer. So I think we're going to maybe we should run that story on our website and social channels sooner than the issue, just to get that cautionary tale out there.
I agree with you. And that's funny. It's not something we'd really discuss, but I think it's so timely for literally right now, and there's and hidden in that, well, not even hidden in plain sight in that article is the lesson. If you suspect and you're out on a boat and you suspect even that something is amiss on another boat, go see what's up. You can save a life. Simple as that.
Yeah, so it's a responsibility as a boater. Now that really kicks things off. It's a cautionary tale, but it also has some inspiration to it.
Mm-hmm.
So then we're gonna jump around. I mean, we can't talk about everything in the issue. I think we'd be here literally all day. But I think the next piece that jumped out at me as one of the cool surprise stories was Mike Smith's piece about the unknown history of the River City, which is Fort Lauderdale. Give me your initial thoughts on that piece when it came across your desk?
I learned a ton with this story. I mean, I think that there's always just sort of this assumption that, South Florida's history really, I don't know, among boaters anyway, that it started in the 50s and 60s up through Miami Vice maybe, and that it was always this like flashy place. And people don't realize what an absolute wilderness that coast of Florida was, what Fort Lauderdale was. And I had no idea that there was so much violence, frankly, associated with Fort Lauderdale's early history. I mean, it was heavy. And the stories of like the barefoot mailman. I mean, when people read this story, they're going to be fascinated. I think. I mean, I think Mike Smith really nailed it on this. And next time I go to Fort Lauderdale, I'm going to look at Las Olas Boulevard, for example, with a different set of eyes.
It's crazy. He touched on so many different eras of Fort Lauderdale, from its founding again to when it was just pure swampland and crocodile wrestling, and so till it became the city it is today. I'm totally with you. The only thing, I hope Mike's not listening, I was going to say, the only thing better than Mike's story are the photos. Unbelievable. Like you see this Model T going through what is now Las Olas, and it's a swamp. It is just a desolate 1-lane dirt path.
Yeah. And and then there's this terrific photo of that we lead with of a Seminole in a canoe, and we really do need to thank the Fort Lauderdale Historical Society. They just came through. I wish we could have devoted 20 pages just for photos that we got for this. It's great.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. It's funny when we're making these issues, you have in your head ahead of time how many pages a story is going to be, and I thought, all right, history of Fort Lauderdale, fun piece. Mike always does such a good job with these research projects. I had 6 in mind. And those photos came through. I think we ran it at 10 in the final version, just because the photos were unbelievable. So they
really were, and they told a story themselves. I mean, there's a great photo that folks will see of a line of yachts along the New River many decades ago, and it really helps put the sort of depth of history in this glitzy town into perspective.
So moving on, I think probably our other biggest feature in terms of page count and was probably selfishly my piece with formula, but I feel it's funny how that works, right? Why do I get the extra pages? But
they were.
I'm biased. I'm definitely biased, but what I loved about it was I loved the boat. It was the 457 CCS was incredible, but I was lucky enough to go out to Decatur, Indiana, and really get to meet a lot of the men and women that work there, and just see the small town Midwest roots that builds these boats that are so advanced, so Miami ready. It was that juxtaposition that I fell in love with. And you're somebody who enjoys a lot of behind the scenes tours. I don't know, maybe you touch on it from like a reader's perspective, or hopefully you found it as interesting as I did.
Well, the level of family history at Formula was something I was vaguely aware of, but it really touched on. It's not only the Formula Boats family; it's the families of it's the extended families that even work there, and
right.
trace their own professional roots to that factory. And powerboating, yachting sometimes gets a bad rap because of the resource consumption, frankly. But how many people economically touch each boat that comes out of a major manufacturer, whether it's Formula, whether it's Scout, here in Charleston?
Right.
It's amazing, and the same thing when you go to a big yard in Europe.
That's a great point. It's, and you come to realize each boat, hundreds of people are touching each boat,
Mm-hmm.
from the components to the systems to the, everything from the Glendenning, shore power, holders. And it's really incredible how many people this industry employs. So
you almost wonder if it's not on a boat like the 457. Okay, if you think of all the components, and then we have a piece on Perco in the article as well, manufacturer of so many metal components over the years, maybe it's over 1,000 people have touched each, Formula 457, each, it maybe more.
So let's so I guess, where the Fort Lauderdale story and the Formula story really come together in an obvious way is in our cover this month. And it's a different one, but man, it's pretty killer. We commissioned an illustration from our friend Brett Affronti, who's a regular illustrator with us. We're lucky to have him. And he kind of set the scene of what was Vic Porter, longtime kind of patriarch of the Formula boats. One of his first boats was a Duo. So we placed that boat, kind of one of the original precursors to Formula. We placed that in kind of 1950s Fort Lauderdale when you get the Bahia Mar in the background. And he really took us back in time where those two stories intersect. And man, I couldn't be happier. It is it's memorable, which is what we hope for.
Yeah, I think it's one of the coolest covers we've ever done. And the fact that that we integrated these two feature stories into this illustration also is just a quintessential South Florida. He nailed it, knocked it out of the park.
Absolutely.
West Marine, you're going to have a hard time not picking it up just with the cover, and hopefully the additional content, and it's going to
for sure. No, it's going to make us stand out in a big way, which is the hope, and that's what I love about it.
Yeah, mad props to Brett for really knocking it out of the park on that.
I couldn't agree more. So now just a quick word from our sponsor. IMTRA is a 100% employee-owned company committed to bringing best-in-class products, expert product knowledge, and unparalleled support to the entire marine industry throughout North America since 1952. All right, Chris. Well, we really can't talk about an issue of Power Motoryacht and not touch on some of the boats we covered here. We had the Jeanneau 895 Series 2 that our colleague Pim Van Hemmen did a great job on really figuring out what was new on that model. And then we had the CV400Z by another colleague in editor-in-chief of Angler's Journal, Charlie Levine. And I really love the perspective those guys brought to the boats. I felt like their personalities came through in those boat reviews.
I think so too. And I think, they both spoke to each one of their strengths in terms of the boats that they are really passionate about themselves,
Yeah.
The Jeanneau boat, I think Pim described it as an SUV. And I mean, I think for both me and you being dads, like to get out on the water with their families and go have adventures. I mean, this boat really would check the boxes for me. And then Charlie writing about the CV, I mean, that's just a fishing machine, definitely. And then you got to do the Tiara 54, yeah?
Yes. And I was seriously impressed with that boat. Lucky enough that I got to cruise on the 60 for a day, taking that boat down to Chicago. So I really got to appreciate the subtle differences between the two. But I think the spoiler alert there is that, the 54 is, has almost all of the great features of the 60, a little bit smaller engine package, a couple small changes to the accommodations, but it is just really impressive. I think this is the second boat in what they're calling the EX, their adventure line. And, this second sibling is a standout, no doubt.
Yeah, and it was funny because you were talking about how it could speak to your family members as well.
Yes, exactly, exactly.
Yeah, no, it's a really great looking boat. And I'm actually I want you to send me up to the Great Lakes sometime to do a story myself on the tiaras because
Mm.
it's on my bucket list. I've visited a couple of the Great Lakes, but
Mm.
I've never been able to boat out on them. So I'm gonna hold your feet to the fire to let me go the next
Oh,
time.
sold. That's approved.
Cool.
So, so moving on, yeah, there's so much to talk about, but I think we're gonna bring this in for a landing. And the last piece I want to talk about is Michael Rybovich's Stem to Stern. Wow, this one, he's like quickly becoming a fan favorite. We get a lot of letters about his columns and his his different takes on certain things. But this one was powerful. He wrote about the passing of his of man's best friend, his dog Doc,
Yep.
and man, this was like a Hallmark movie mixed between I don't know what Marley and
Was.
Me and what I mean, it just sounds like a great boatyard dog. But what a powerful piece.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think anybody who owns a boat dog, well, doesn't own a boat dog, who has a boat dog that owns them,
Hmm. Well
this
said.
story really is going to speak to all of you. I mean, and it's funny because I was reading it and just nodding my head because a we have a pure mutt who has a lot of water dog in her. She's got a breed called a Moody in her, and she if she doesn't get to go out on the boat with us and she knows we're going, I mean, she's just dejected, and I just reading the level of both love, but also just the way that this dog became a part of Rybovich's extended work and family, was just, yeah, it was really something. He did a great job.
I mean, what is it about boating and dogs that just seem to go together? Because also was reminded of, I think most of our columnists, have written about their dogs at one
Mhm.
point or another. And Bob Arrington had a piece not all that long ago about when his dog, was dogged and dogs
Yeah,
that had passed away, and that really struck a chord. I mean, to me, part of it is like I think a good dog accentuates the boating lifestyle. I mean,
definitely.
it's there's something about it.
I think it's almost to a degree. If you have a dog that really loves to be on the boat, you're
Hmm.
you can channel a bit of that dog's sort of innocent
Hmm.
enthusiasm and realize how freaking lucky you are by watching this dog. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
And appreciate it. So yeah, it was a really solid piece. And Rybovich to me is just he's such an interesting, fully rounded human being. Frankly, he's able to write so well, and then just build these boats, and he's such a Renaissance man, and he pours that fact into this piece on his pup.
He is such an interesting character, right? And I was fond of making the joke where when I saw him, it's like the fact that you can build beautiful boats and write the way you do is such bullshit. It's like I can barely write. I can't build a boat, and it just doesn't seem fair. But it's more than his writing abilities. It's like his ability to call it like he sees it. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
he's not the most politically correct or all the time, or he certainly can take bold stands at times. But I think that's also why people find him so refreshing.
Yeah.
Is just kind of his stances.
Well, he's able to, if he has an opinion, it's based on a lifetime of experience, and he usually relates it in some way to his work and family life, and how the hard work that he's done through his life has informed his worldview, and yeah, he's a really interesting human being, and it's really an honor that he deigns to provide us with a column every month. Frankly,
Yeah, and on that note, I mean, I really, when I look at each of our issues, I feel extremely lucky with the mix of columnists that we have.
Yep.
I mean, it's obviously Michael, and we talked about Mike Smith, who's been doing a tremendous job for us for a long time. But not lest we forget, then we have Bob Arrington, who really brings the full-time cruising perspective. And the guy truly walks the walk, and his columns I feel like are just getting better and better. So shout out to Bob, and lest we forget, Bill Prince and his Inside Angle column has also become quickly a fan favorite. I mean, I really look forward to it as a reader. When it comes across my desk, I will save it for a couple of days so I can make sure I could read it. I want to be able to read it fresh, like with a cup of coffee, and kind of read it the way our readers would.
Yeah.
This month he had a great piece. I love when he incorporates his family stories as well. So this column, he talks about just one of the, how would you describe it? It was a lesson for his son that kind of possibly changed the course of his life. I don't want to give too much away,
yeah.
But yeah,
for sure. Yeah. And he really does have, because of his career, again, he's able to look back at boat design and bring perspective, but also
exactly.
Okay, maybe we're going too far in one direction with all this modernity, for example. The piece that he did, was it in June, July, Dan, where he
it was the helm piece.
Yeah, the helm piece. If you guys haven't read his article from June, July, was it called Virtual Reality? Is that what I can't quite remember.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah, I'm not going to go on and on, but he really does bring an interesting, thought-provoking perspective into what's right and wrong with regards to boat design these days. And then he was able to take his life experience and put it in this current issue into an interaction with his son that, as you said, may well have changed his son's life. It's great.
Yeah. Well, there's that and so much more. I mean, lest we forget, we had a teaser of a new company called Revel Yachts. I'm excited about that. Your in our wake column is really strong. I mean, maybe we could touch on that quickly without giving away. It is a shorter piece, but that certainly doesn't mean just because a piece is shorter. I know you did your homework and put a lot of research into our back page. Maybe give readers a little teaser.
Yeah, sure. I want to just throw out a quick thank you to Jack Aylesworth at the Antique Outboard Motor Club group on Facebook, who also he's a long timer with OMC back in the day, and he has an encyclopedic knowledge of old boats. And then and he put me onto this onto the author who I actually ended up interviewing for this story. I'm not going to go very deep, but just to say, sometimes even with short pieces, you almost go down a rabbit hole. And in this case, you and I were backing and forthing on, okay, who actually built the first fiberglass production boat? And that seemed like you'd be able to find that answer really easily, but I almost went down a bit of a rabbit hole, and found out that the production aspect, one, it didn't go nearly as smoothly as you might have thought back in the day, but two, how far back it actually goes. And I think it's a really interesting piece, and I learned I learned something new in writing it. I hope the readers will get something out of it as well.
Yeah, that might be one worth turning to first. I'll give one spoiler. The first, what we believe is the first fiberglass production builder, is not who you think it is.
Exactly.
So I think that was the big lesson for me. It was like, oh, I know who this is, and it's like, no, Wrong again, Dan. That's
not even
the second time that's happened in my life.
Yeah, and I mean, maybe a guy to that point that we end up doing a feature on somewhere down the road, because he's a fascinating cat. The dude that designed this boat, and so I hope you guys will enjoy the piece.
You did a great job, and I know you got a couple big surprise stories for us in the upcoming issue. So more on that, hopefully in an upcoming episode. But that's a quick teaser. There really is a lot more that we didn't get to touch on in the August-September issue. It should be landing in your mailbox sometime soon. But make sure you get that and all of our issues. You can subscribe at pmymag.com/subscribe. And now, just a final closing word from our sponsor. Whether you're considering installing thrusters on your boat and have pre-sale questions, or you already have them and you need post-sale troubleshooting and service, IMTRA offers unparalleled support with a full-time team of product experts that are there to help. With hundreds of different thruster sizes and styles from Sleipner, IMTRA is the best source for your bow and stern thruster needs. Visit IMTRA.com or give them a call to get all your thruster questions answered. That's it, Chris. Thank you for your time. I think we should grab our dogs and head out on the water and get back to that next issue on Monday.
Sounds good, man. And hope everybody has a great week as well. And thank you guys for tuning in.
Absolutely. See you guys out on the water. Thanks, Chris. Later, man.